Coming up here on the Raiders Report, you're about to see a video that I recorded earlier in the week about if Klint Kubiak is hired to be the next Raiders head coach. Here are the free agent targets that I'm going to look at. At the time I'm recording this video, it's just after our crazy live show that we just did. The Raiders are expected to hire Klint. So nothing really changes in this video. I just wanted y'all to know that the video you're about to see was recorded before we all found out that Klint Kubiak's be the next head coach. If you're fired up, if you're inspired, if you want Klint, hit that like button right now. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report. And coming up here on today's show, I'm going to be looking at the top free agent targets for Klint Kubiak if he is hired to be the next Raiders head coach. I'm live right now on the Raiders Report. This is Saturday, and I came in live today because I'm sitting here like every Raiders fan waiting, wondering, is Kubiak going to be the next head coach of the Silver and Black? Now, I will say this. If the player you see on this show, this is not me saying I like this player and that I would want the Raiders to go out and sign them. That's not it at all. What today's objective is on this program is every single player has a connection to Kubiak. And we know it from all of the different coaching staffs and regimes that this organization has brought in over the past few seasons. If you have a connection to a coach, that makes you a target for the Raiders. And with over $89.3 million according to Over the Cap, it's going to be a little bit more once some of that extra money rolls in. Top two money in salary cap space. We're going to have the money to go out and spend. And because we have the money to spend, you're going to see a lot of names on today's show. Since Kubiak is an offensive-minded coach and he's a play caller on the offensive side of the football, we will only look at players on offense today. We're going to first start with quarterback. And, you know, when you think about quarterback, again, I want to be very clear. I want the Raiders to draft Fernando Mendoza. I believe the Raiders are going to draft Fernando Mendoza. I don't think you hire Klint Kubiak unless he wants to coach Fernando Mendoza. But at the same time, when you look at this quarterback roster, you got to be able to face the facts and know. Geno Smith's going to be gone. Kenny Pickett's going to be a free agent. Aiden O'Connell is literally the only quarterback that we have on this team. So if you want to try to bring in somebody else, I do think that that is very, very, very important. Let's first talk about the name here, Kirk Cousins. At this moment, he's not a free agent, okay? At this moment, he's not a free agent. I anticipate that the Atlanta Falcons are going to end up moving on from him because I think the amount of money they would owe him, it's like $67 million. I don't want that to happen, and I don't think you're going to have to pay him a lot. But Kubiak did work with Cousins from 2019 to 2021. So if you did want to bring in a bridge quarterback, Cousins could be at least a name to keep in mind. If it was up to me, though, I think you already got your good backup bridge quarterback. It's Aiden O'Connell, who can teach your new guy, Mendoza, the ways of Kubiak. Let's go to another name here. It's Brett Rypien. And he was with Kubiak in 2022 with the Denver Broncos. Not sitting up here saying it's going to be anything special, but if you're looking for a quarterback three, you bring in Brett Rypien, somebody that knows the offense maybe a little bit. Again, in 2022, Kubiak wasn't an OC. To be clear, the only years that he's been an offensive coordinator, 2021 with Minnesota, 2024 with New Orleans, and 2025 with the Seattle Seahawks. Because I want the Raiders to draft Mendoza. Mendoza's going to be your guy. So if you're going to bring in some other QBs, you want him to be able to work with them. But also, if you checked out my video that I did probably a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, about the quarterbacks that I, Mitchell Renz, would look at bringing into the building, the people that I would look at are not anybody that I mentioned on today's show. Let's go to the running back position next up here on the program in terms of some Kubiak free agent targets, and there's a lot of names. And I know that some people don't think that the Raiders are going to go out and sign a running back, but I actually personally do. I could see the Silver and Black not only signing a running back in free agency, but also drafting one because you have Ashton Jeanty. And Jeanty does need to have fresh legs, hopefully in December and January when we're playing some meaningful football. But Raheem Mostert, Zamir White, both free agents. Does anybody here have any confidence in Dylan Laube? Does anybody have any confidence in Chris Collier? I know this. I personally do not. So for me, if I'm the Raiders, I'm going out and I'm trying to find that RB2. The top running back in the open market this offseason is Kenneth Walker. I don't think Kenneth Walker comes to Las Vegas, but if you were the Raiders and you said, all right, maybe I want to go with a two-headed monster. I mean, Genty and Kenneth Walker is the definition of a two-headed monster. But I do think you have to bring up Walker because he's been with Kubiak, and he's right now the main back in Seattle. Let's go to another back here for the Seattle Seahawks. It's George Holani. Smaller dude who's getting some work right now because Zach Charbonnet ended up tearing his ACL. I don't anticipate this being a big-time deal, but if you're the Raiders and you're like, hey, man, I want to add an RB4, you could bring in a George Holani. What about a Jeremy McNichols? This was somebody that worked with Kubiak back in 2023 with the San Francisco 49ers. And you got to talk about all the different teams, all the different regimes that Kubiak's been a part of. You bring in a guy like Jeremy McNichols, again, you're not going to have to pay him a lot. Probably pay him the vet minimum, $1.2 million. What about a dude like Chase Edmonds? Edmonds was with Kubiak in Denver in 2022. This was a back that I liked him a lot at Arizona, had some unfortunate injuries, went to some different coaching regimes. That could be somebody to keep in mind. What about Tyler Badie? Right now is looking halfway decent in Denver. Kubiak worked with him in 2022. Pass catching back, can do some different things for you, a little bit of a scat back. Alexander Mattison, right, former Raider. We brought him in, a few years ago when the Raiders ended up hiring Kennedy Polamalu, running back coach in Minnesota at the time. But Alexander Mattison was with Kubiak in Minnesota when Klint was the offensive coordinator of the Vikings. You know what's funny? You weren't the only one. If you told me Ameer Abdullah and Alexander Mattison could potentially be back with this organization, I would find that to be very, very interesting. But no doubt, we need to be able to find a running back that we believe in that can be a good third down back, that can catch the football, because that probably is the weakest part of Genty's game right now. What about Kene Nwangwu? You know, I can remember doing shows 2-3 years ago when the Raiders brought in Kennedy Polamalu talking about these different Minnesota Vikings running backs. If you're looking for a thumper that can come in for just a few carries here and there, maybe. But again, the objective of today's show is to sit up here and say, hey, this guy has a connection to Kubiak. I'm not saying that this is somebody I would go out and get. It's just simply because we have so many different holes, there's going to be a lot of holes that we need to fill. Giggity. And sometimes those lower level depth spots, those I'm just trying to build depth on this program, those guys come from certain coaching connections, which is what we're trying to accomplish today. So here's going to be the pinned comment on today's show. Who will be the first player the Raiders sign in free agency? You're about to get in with a YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down and give me your answer. Let me know who you think that first player is going to be that the Raiders sign. Given a specific player might be difficult. So I'll just say it like this. I hope that they help in the trenches. Yes, I would like it to be on the offensive side of the football. Maybe it's a Tyler Lindenbaum. Maybe it's a Braden Smith, somebody on the offensive line. Though it could also be somebody on that defensive line, like a John Franklin Myers. This needs to be a team that values the trenches, because when you value the trenches, it helps you make all the other players around you better. And because this team has so many damn holes, if you help your trenches, it helps everybody else out. If you try to build around everything else and you ignore the trenches, it hurts the other players that you invested in. If you haven't already, I hope that you guys hit that subscribe button. Hope you turn on your notifications, especially if you're looking for free agency videos all off season long. I wasn't born a Raider fan, but I hope people know that watch this show. I bleed silver and black now, and there's not going to be another person on the planet that outworks me. There's not going to be somebody else on the planet that also provides more content for Raider Nation. So if you're just like me and you're excited about the offseason, I hope they hit that subscribe button. And if you don't learn anything after a week watching this show, unsubscribe. You got absolutely nothing to lose. Let's go to the wide receiver position here. And this is another one, right? If you plan on drafting Fernando Mendoza, I do think it's important for you to potentially bring in a wide receiver in free agency because of how young this receiver group is. You got Trey Tucker, you got Jack Besh, but both of those guys are young. Lockett's going to be gone. Bachman's going to be gone. So then you're looking at all the other names you got here. Cedric Jackson, Dante Thornton Jr. There is so many unknown commodities. I will say this, probably the number one player that I would want the Raiders to go out and target that has a connection to Kubiak, it's Rashid Shaheed. We need a receiver that can stretch the field, that gives us some special teams value, but also has those Klint Kubiak connections. Shaheed was with them not only this past season in Seattle, the reason why he's there right now in Seattle, because he was with them in New Orleans. Then New Orleans ends up trading him to Seattle during the trade deadline. When you have a running back like Genty, when you have a great two tight end duo, you need somebody that can take the top off of a defense. And that's what Rashid Shaheed could do. He's not a true number one, but Bowers can be that true number one. And Shaheed could be that other number two. Let's go to Dareke Young here, 6'2", 224-pounder. This is, again, bottom of the roster type player. Jake Bobo, I do actually think would be a little bit more of an intriguing option, who's actually done a little bit more in the playoffs than he did during the regular season. In terms of Seattle, those are the players that are right now with the Seahawks. But if you go back and you look at a year like 2024, Marquez Valdes-Scantling was there in New Orleans when that offense had to rely on some of its backup players a little bit. 19 catches, 411 yards. That's a field stretcher. And if you know that you're still looking for a field stretcher, he's probably like 32 years old now, but there's a connection there. That's not the only name. Dante Pettis, another little bit bigger of an outside receiver, which is something that this team needs, no doubt about it. Pettis, 12 catches, 120 yards and a touchdown in New Orleans in 2024. Then, this is probably one of the bigger names, Jauan Jennings. Jennings scares me a little bit because I am concerned he might get overpaid based on the year he had in 2024, based on the year that he had in 2025. I'm not paying Jauan Jennings north of $15 million a year. I do think he gets north of $15 million a year. Like, if you're telling me I can pay $15 million north for Jauan Jennings or about $15 million for Rashid Shaheed, I'm taking Rashid Shaheed every single day of the week and twice again on Sunday. And I'm filming this on Saturday, so give me it twice again on Saturday. Jennings, though, didn't do a lot with Kubiak in 2023, but he will be one of the top free agent wide receivers out there this upcoming season. Coming up next here, though, on the program, we're going to look at some tight ends, we're going to look at some offensive tackles, and we're also going to look at some interior offensive linemen that the Silver and Black could target in free agency if they hire Klint Kubiak. Before I get into that, though, huge shout-out to today's sponsor, PrizePicks, because the big game, it's almost here. And there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season outright with PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Do you miss fantasy football? If the answer to that is yes, PrizePicks lets you play fantasy football each week, pick your favorite players, and win when they hit their projections every week. So up on screen right now, this is not my personal lineup. This is actually Reed's lineup that he threw together. But I do like this lineup for fans out there that are rooting for Klint Kubiak, that are rooting for Seattle in the big game. Why? Drake May, the value's there at 0.5 passing yards. You know the more is going to happen. And then I like to consider this a little bit of a Klint Kubiak stack. JSN, Kenneth Walker, Sam Darnold, though I will say it's not a conventional PrizePicks stack, because a conventional PrizePicks stack is picking the same player up to 3 times. But if you plan on watching the big game, luckily for you, PrizePicks is available in all 50 states. So download the PrizePicks app today. Make sure that you use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Let's now go to the tight end group here. And the tight end room is, again, you got Brock Bowers, you got Michael Mayer. It's finding that replacement for Ian Thomas, who's your tight end 3. I'll also say this, Albert O, who's one of our backups right now, he actually also has some ties to Kubiak. So I actually do think that Albert O is going to be somebody that ends up making this roster because, again, of those connections. You also have Carter Runyon, who did a halfway decent job last year as a UDFA coming out of Townsend. But your number one objective, how can I find that Ian Thomas replacement. Maybe you bring in Brady Russell. I'll be real. Not even really a tight end. This would be more of like a John Raddington replacement. Raddington was a linebacker we brought in from Seattle and really just a special teams demon. That's what Brady Russell is. He's listed as a tight end. He's really just a special teams player. This is going to be a name that I think fires up everybody. Foster Moreau, Australian for tight end number 3 on the Raiders team. I have a lot of respect for Foster, and I still constantly, I mix up Foster Moreau and Michael Mayer all the time because they wear 87, but, Foster's had to deal with a lot of stuff since leaving the Raiders, and I don't know if he would want to be a tight end 3 on this organization, but what I do think was he was used properly by Kubiak in 2024. Again, a lot of injuries popped up, but if you're trying to be a team that wants to run the football, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to kind of do what the Rams have done and do a little bit more 3 tight end sets, especially when you're not 100% sold on your wide receiver 1, which I don't know if the Raiders are going to be 100% sold on their number 1 wide receiver. Another name here to throw in because he is a tight end, it's Taysom Hill. I don't really think that this one's just going to happen. The theme of today's show was trying to put names together that have worked with Kubiak. Greg Dulcich, I do think is actually an interesting name because he's more of a blocker. And if I want to bring in a tight end 3 for this organization, you got to be able to block, which is what Greg Dulcich does. Also, it's what Andrew Beck does, who you could consider him even more of a fullback than you do a tight end. And if you're looking for a tight end 3 that, again, block, you can bring in Beck to be that tight end 3, but also you'd be able to go with a fullback here if you want to go a little bit more power eye. Another name to throw out there is Tyler Conklin. When I first started doing this show, I actually had the opportunity. Conklin and I would DM from time to time. He seemed like a good dude. 61 grabs back in 2021 when he was with Kubiak in Minnesota. And that's like right when he first came out of Central Michigan. He's not even close to that player anymore. But because he was good with Kubiak with the Vikings, who knows? Maybe that's somebody he would keep in mind. Coming up here next, though, on the program, we got some targets to look at the offensive line. And never going to sit up here and lie to y'all. It's not going to be the offensive lineman that I think a lot of y'all want to hear. But because the Raiders still need some extra depth on that line, the names could be some names that we do go out and bring in because of how many free agents we have hitting the open market. So make sure you guys don't miss anything going on around the Raiders Report, especially when we do events. I've never been out to San Jose, California. I can't wait because, we meet so many amazing people that watch this show. Like I'm looking right now down in the chat. I see Eddie, Austin, Roxco. Shout out to Kurt, Omello, Nathan Wolf. I've actually hung out with Nathan. When you actually meet somebody in person, it is, man. It's a different level. Like you feel, me as a host, I get to see so many people every single day. But I only get to see your name. I only get to see your logo. You guys actually get to see my face. So when I finally get to meet y'all, it's like that. It's just the extra level of me getting to know y'all. And I want to build the number 1 Raiders community in the world. So if anybody out there wants to hang out with Chugs and I, here's the date. There's the time. There's how you can call to reserve your spot. It's going to be a packed house. And if you live close to the area, I hope they end up showing up. Let's go to the offensive tackle position now for the silver and black. And OT is, we got Colt Miller on the left side. It depends what you feel about DJ Glaze. It depends how you feel about Charles Grant. Because if one of these guys can end up winning that job, then maybe it's not as big of a need. At the same time, I don't know if I blame anybody with not having a lot of confidence in Glaze coming off the year that he did, though. He looked a lot better as a rookie, probably because Brennan Carroll wasn't with this organization then. But if you're the Raiders and you're going to draft a quarterback, you have to make sure that his tackle position is solidified. I would say the top name out there is Josh Jones, who did play in 12 games this past season, ended up getting injured. But even this isn't a name that's going to inspire a lot of confidence in me personally. I'd say just you're better off rolling with Charles Grant. Landon Young, monster of a human being, 6'7", 321 pounds, played 11 games with the Saints in 2024. What about Spencer Burford? 13 games played, 5 sacks allowed, 6'4", 300 pounds from UTSA in 2023 with San Francisco when Kubiak was a part of that regime as a pass game coordinator underneath Shanahan. Let's now go to the interior offensive line position here because If I'm looking at the Raiders' needs, I look at interior offensive line as one of the biggest needs on this roster. Ben Bartch was in San Francisco with Kubiak in the year 2023, played in 7 games, allowed 2 sacks. Matt Pryor, gigantic human being, 6'7", 332 pounds out of TCU, 5 games with Kubiak. And then, out of all the names, this would be the one that I do think is really interesting, Dalton Risner. And I say that because Risner was a guy that I talked about last year. And I remember people being like, no, Mitch, we're going to be fine. We don't need an interior offensive lineman. Dalton Risner is still good enough to be able to go out there and be a potential starter. There are other areas that I would rather address, and there's other guards that I think would be a better fit for us. But if you're just talking about a veteran who's worked with Klint Kubiak, out of all these names on the interior, Dalton Risner's the one to keep an eye on. If you made it this far in the video and you appreciate the content that we're providing here today, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow me on social media. I'm at MitchellRens365. But at the end of the day, I'm excited about free agency. I'm excited about what can happen. And I'm excited to see this show continuously grow. And I hope it continuously grows. So if you're not already subbed and you learned something from today's program, I hope if you made it this far, you hit that sub button.